Greetings this evening of your time as you create time. How are you? Oh, thank you very much. Allow me to begin this interaction with the entitlement, positive and negative synchronicity. All right. Oh, thank you. Allow me to begin with the following idea, which you may or may not have heard. Although you perceive yourself as distinct, single beings, separate from your surroundings, and within a reality, we again remind you that this is a self-created apparency. That, perhaps you can say, in fact, the reality exists within you. And although there is the apparency of all these separate ideas, everything fundamentally, foundationally, is all one thing. Many, many facets of one expression. Many, many aspects of one event. And by the immutable nature and fact that this is one unbroken, continuous, singular event, everything within that one event that you call your reality is interwoven, is, in that sense, enmeshed. What you call coincidence is not accident or accidental, but it is all of the various incidences occurring at the same time. Same coincidence, incidences, coincidence. Understand that because everything is all one expression, everything is related to everything else. From your point of view, there may be varying degrees of significance to you of any particular meaning. However, from the overall point of view, everything is all one thing. And because the definition of synchronicity is that everything is all one thing, an interwoven expression, everything is synchronicity itself. Everything, no matter what. Therefore, synchronicity, the interwovenness of all creation, is, in a sense you may say, the rule, not the exception within it. Now, your experience of this synchronicity, of everything as belonging, of everything as having a reason, of everything as reinforcing your point of view, will depend solely on your particular choice of interpretation. The only thing that you need do to realize positive synchronicity, which is a positive outcome, and perhaps an outcome you say you wish in that sense to experience, is very simply to allow yourself to be aware that everything is synchronicity. When you allow yourself access to this awareness, then you allow yourself a tool of realignment in any given moment. For if in a moment you say, why is this happening to me? You are in that sense affirming that your reality is a series of broken events rather than one expression. And therefore you get that effect. When you say, why is this happening to me? It continues to seem as though it is happening to you. But when you remind yourself that it is happening from you, it is you, and ask yourself how it is of service to you, you then take the synchronicity and in interpreting it in a positive way, giving yourself the opportunities that synchronicity brings. For in every given moment, there is a reason for absolutely everything within your perception. No exceptions, down to the dust on the leaf on the tree. In terms of you needing to be consciously aware of each and every meaning, this is not always so. And this is what I mean by relative degree of significance. Things which may not seem to have a direct, obvious meaning to you do have a direct, obvious meaning to someone else who is also creating, through synchronicity, the similar circumstance and the similar proximity to the event that you are beholding. So very simply, this can be applied by, first of all, in any situation, realizing that everything is synchronicity. Everything fits, everything has a reason, everything is there to be of service. And that, again, one step, so to speak, will align you to the positive synchronicity in the situation. Step 2, very simply, is act that way. If you truly say, I understand that this is synchronicity, then look at what actions that you can take with integrity because of the circumstance that the synchronicity has delivered to you. Take the very event that you may have before said, why is this happening to me? And now, understanding that it is happening from you, realize that there is something you can do because that circumstance has showed up. There is some action that you can take that you would not have been able to take without that particular circumstance popping up. That is, in the same exact instance, giving you the opportunity to either get a negative effect with the negative interpretation or a positive effect from the positive interpretation and subsequent positive actions. Therefore, everything is synchronicity. When you interpret that synchronicity through negative means as though it is happening to you, your experience of that synchronicity will be negative synchronicity. And sometimes, perhaps you can say, one of the ways your society will define the perpetuation of negative synchronicity in your life is with the nomenclature you seem to refer to as bad luck, which there is no such thing as. But when you accept synchronicity in that way, and in fact then imbue it as a momentum, imbue it also predicting that perhaps this is what you may continue to expect, you create that negative synchronicity. You create the synchronicity that already exists and experience it through negative terminology. However, you can always turn this around quite simply with a simple reminder that everything is synchronicity. It is there for a reason. Now, when you look for the reason, either it will be immediately obvious because you have given yourself the opportunity to look at it, or it may, in that sense, not be that obvious. That in and of itself tells you whether the meaning in that moment is relatively significant to you. If you say, all right, this would seem like a bummer, and I understand it to be synchronicity, what is its positive meaning? What does it mean to me in a positive way? And that meaning comes along, then you needed to know the specific meaning. But if it does not, that as well as an indication tells you in that moment that you need not know that specific reason, and perhaps it will become apparent later if you need to know it at all. But the point is, if there is not a meaning forthcoming in a given moment, you need not fixate upon obtaining one. You may understand that is the answer to the question, that the meaning, the specific meaning of that symbol is not at that moment important to you, or it will be completely obvious. Is this clear? So therefore, you need not struggle with these meanings. They will either be completely apparent and then be of service through you through that apparency, or it will not be that apparent, but you can still align with a positive action to take in that moment, understanding that you know that it has a meaning. Because you create yourself in linear terms, whereby you do unroll your knowingness rather than having it all at once. It seems as though you unroll it according to a timeline, according to the particular coincidences current in that moment. There are certain things which simply would not behoove you to know the meaning of. And knowing the meaning of it in that moment would actually be a distraction rather than an aid. So allow that feedback to be completely obvious. Is there a meaning? Yes. All right. Is there a meaning? No. All right. No meaning. I will keep my eye out in case a meaning pops up, but I will not fixate upon that meaning, for that then locks you into a loop where thereby you can create the appearance of negative synchronicity from fixating upon something and again assuming it to be extraneous. Not knowing something is just as meaningful as knowing it. It is not, if I know it, it is perfect. If I do not, I'm flubbing it up. It's extraneous. No. Your reality is so obvious that if you do not need to know something, that will be completely obvious. And this is not always well understood. If again, you feel, well, it is something I would wish to know the meaning of, then maintain as a clear intention, I intend to discover that meaning and move on. Move on, meaning act in that moment from what is available. But to the degree that you are willing to begin to recognize synchronicity, you then begin to be able to marvel in the splendor of your creatorhood. For you literally do create it down to the subatomic particle, and perhaps you can say even further. And the complexity through which you create is, in fact, again, the splendor of the life you call your reality. So therefore, nothing within that reality is extraneous. Everything has a reason. Everything has a meaning. And if you simply realign to that idea and act that way, everything that we have shared with you simply falls into place. Perhaps you can say in many ways that most of what we have ever shared with you boils down to, number one, everything is synchronicity, and number two, act with integrity on the opportunities that synchronicity brings you. Therefore, you can look at the many different interpretations that you have within your life in any given moment. If you are, in that sense, interpreting through fear, through anger, through jealousy, through hate, then you are interpreting your reality through negative synchronistic terms. If you interpret your reality through excitement, through joy, through unconditional love, through willingness in that sense to be of service and be served, you are then interpreting your reality through positive synchronous terms. And this is the only change or shift in your perspective from your point of view that then allows you to experience one or the other. Now, I remind you, negative does not mean bad and positive means good. That is one way to look at it, but they are very general terms. And again, from our perspective, negative is simply the energy of separation and positive is the energy of integration. And in order to remain physical beings, you must maintain some degree of separation. So negative energy is part and parcel of what allows you to experience yourself as discrete and separate beings. So there is nothing wrong with negative. And in fact, you could only be experiencing the very reality you are creating right now through the use of that type and style of energy. But what gives you negative or positive experience, negative or positive happenings in your life can, in that sense, be altered by your action. For you can, in that sense, perform separative actions which do not, in that sense, take into consideration that everything is all one thing, and then get the reinforcement of that idea, which you will call negative synchronicity. Or you can simply understand again the oneness, the positive idea. And upon assigning the positive label and the positive interpretation, the positive orientation, you will then perform the positive actions. And again, it is the actions that you perform that will determine what you get, the experience in your physical life. So you need not forsake the negative. And you may find in your synchronous explorations that you will find many other individuals who are exploring negativity. What will allow them to enjoy their explorations and you to enjoy yours is your willingness to validate without condoning through your own actions their negativity. They have the right, just as much as you have the right to experience and explore anything you wish, they have the right to explore negativity. And as you expand, you will become more aware of both. But if you allow the awareness of negativity to simply be through the experience of others and allow the awareness of positivity to be your direct experience, well, why not? That certainly is an option, and many of you are beginning in that sense to delve into this idea. Therefore, you may understand that doing what excites you the most from what is available in any given moment and acting on that excitement with integrity is, in one sense, you may say, the ultimate acknowledgement of positive synchronicity and the ultimate acknowledgement of your willingness to act on that synchronicity and, nice touch, have a good time along the way. For do understand that you do not have from this moment forward to continue to experience misery in your life. That also, being an emotion, is the result of a belief that you hold and your willingness to use your emotions, not deny them, not attempt to escape them, which is impossible as you stand right now, but use them to trace back the belief, will allow you in that sense to transform that same belief. And therefore, the effect of that belief, the so-called misery. Now understand also that what you call misery many times also is simply the choice, perhaps unconsciously, but no less a choice, of, in that moment, negative interpretation. And you may experience what you call sadness or misery simply by, in a given moment, interpreting according to negative means, interpreting things through, in that sense, a negative perspective. That belief that a negative thing can manifest in your life can, in that sense, in and of itself, bring along the feeling that you call misery. But your willingness to realign in a given moment, reassign that everything is synchronicity, and perhaps this is not the one exception in the universe, will allow you in that moment to do something different. It is when in the similar situation you do the same thing that that similar situation has the same effect or you have the same experience from it. But the moment you do one thing differently, even if you've already interpreted it negatively, you cannot get the same effect. It is impossible. It is not the interpretation that gives you the experiential effect in your life. The interpretation may give you the emotion, but what gives you the experience in your life is the perspective that you act from, is the perspective that you move or do from. So even if you initially, through perhaps old habits, if you will, interpret something as negative, if you do not act in that moment, if you allow yourself to remind yourself everything is synchronicity, again, perhaps this is not the only exception, perhaps this is synchronicity too. Initially, I had assigned it a negative label and I can see how I was about to do something that would definitely yield a negative effect. However, I am now in reminding myself that this is also synchronicity, searching other options. Before I act, what can I do that would be positive? In my imagination, what would the preferred me do? Not the me who just negatively interpreted this and was then about to react from that negative interpretation, but the preferred me who did not even interpret it that way to begin with. Use your imagination along with the concept of synchronicity. Bring forth the referential, preferential you, the preferred you in your imagination, and hand the situation over, understanding that that preferred you, that new you, so to speak, is looking at it as synchronicity. Watch what that you does. Do that new thing rather than the quote unquote old approach. And you cannot help, no matter what, but get a positive result across the board. Simply, there is no such thing as an accident, which is something that was not meant to be. There may be the idea of having a particular intention and having that intention not quite play out the way that you would have perceived that it would, and then you label it accidental. But ultimately, everything is coincidence. Incidences occurring at the same time, interwoven, and one thing has absolutely everything to do with everything else. Nothing is unrelated. So therefore, it is no accident in that way that you are here this evening of your time, interacting with us in this way. It is no accident, whatever it is that you will do next when you leave this interaction. Everything has a reason. Allow yourself to begin to be aware of the reasons, where and when they present themselves. And again, if it is not completely obvious, do not create paralysis, but continue to move. Continue to move with excitement. Continue to move with the knowledge that even though I do not know the meaning, I am reminded that this is synchronicity, and therefore it is an opportunity, a blessing in disguise. For your willingness in that sense to interact with us in this way, and for your willingness to allow us to express to you what you already know, I thank you and ask you how I may be of service to you. Shutting. It's female, then male.
We were just talking about blessings in disguise. I've been having a really hard time the last couple of months peeling away a lot of layers of hurt and anger, and I've had a lot of physical difficulties. I've had headaches, I've had intestinal grips, and I've been getting really annoyed at this whole process.
All right.
But I'm beginning to see how it served me, and it's come all the way back to two words. And one time you said the opposite of love is not hate, but guilt.
Yes.
Total self-invalidation. What about shame? Does shame...
A similar expression. It is in that sense, in general, not the idea that you are aware that you have done something that you no longer prefer only, but that you have done something that you no longer prefer and are in full judgment of yourself about it. So in a sense, for this purpose, they are interchangeable terms. But the idea is this. Once you have done something, understood and realized it is not something that you any longer wish to do, that can be in and of itself the end of the process. Your resolve, I will no longer do this, particularly knowing how it then has you feeling, will give you at some point perhaps an opportunity to create similar circumstances whereby you will have the opportunity to do that thing again, and then the opportunity to subsequently choose not to. Do proceed.
I have one more question. We're planning to take a trip from Calgary, Canada, down to San Francisco from July 8th to about the 24th. Are there going to be any earthquake or... I've been listening to a lot of predictions lately, coming up for this summer. Will there be anything from Canada down to the, San Francisco on the California coast within that time period that we should not go?
From our particular understanding right now, and do understand that this can change, that will be a relatively quiet period.
And I have one more question.
All right.
A while back, it's taken me a long time to ask you about this because I wasn't sure.
Well, do understand it is the perfect time, but do proceed.
About 3 months ago, back before Christmas, I woke up in the middle of the night and there was this bright white light in the room with me.
Nice.
And it felt like, I remembered what you said about anytime I hear something or see something to open my eyes this time and see what I saw. And the white light just stayed there. It didn't have any particular form. It was about 3 feet long and about a foot wide. And I felt very safe with the light, but from my waist down, it felt like I was totally paralyzed, tingling and electrified, and I couldn't move at all.
Was there a reason to be needing to move?
No.
Oh.
Well, maybe I was trying to stay in the situation and run away at the same time. That's what it felt like. And so I watched it. It had to be for about 10 minutes. And I thought, well, I'll shut my eyes and see if it's still there. And when I shut my eyes, I could see like Zeta faces with the black eyes, all in front of my face. And when I opened them, it's like all these little heads were looking at me right in my face, about 6 inches away, but very friendly. I mean, they seemed like I had invited them there or something.
Oh.
And then, which I intend to do someday. I would really like to be able to reach out and invite them instead of just being so scared and hoping they won't show up when I can't handle it kind of thing. Was that something that I just created in my higher self to test my own self to see if I was ready yet?
Well, it was a co-creation.
Between me and them.
Nice. Therefore, it would be, perhaps you can say, inaccurate to say that they were not involved. But in many ways, perhaps you would define it as being more of a mental projection than a physical presence.
Oh.
So in that sense, that is their form of allowing you to get your little toe wet.
How did they know that this was the time to do this? When I'm dreaming, I remember in my dream, I was concentrating on doing something very hard, and there was a huge head of a dog right next to me, snarling and growling. And I remember thinking to myself, I can't do this if you're watching me. I have to be by myself. And that's when I woke up and I saw the white light in all the little faces. So I just wondered, how am I attracting them to me?
Well, it is a co-creation of timing. It is subsequently yours and their timing at the same time, then it occurs. The dog in the dream, which is very strongly the symbol of service itself, in a sense, was nudging you in that direction. A wake-up call of sorts.
Okay. Thank you very much.
Oh, thank you. Ma'am.
Greetings, Elan.
And to you, cave dweller.
Thank you. Happy birthday.
Oh.
On some level.
And you all as well.
Yeah, okay. All right. I have some a small example of positive negative synchronicity.
Oh, no example too small.
Yeah, right. But it's interesting because I got in my truck tonight and I turned the lights on and they didn't come on. And I've been driving around with a single headlight for the past week or so, And I thought, oh God, I'm not supposed to go tonight, or this is some sort of message to me that I should stay at home. But as I turned the high beams on, one single light would come on as a high beam. So I continued to drive here, and I decided to change it into more of a positive idea that I'm a single bright light.
Oh.
And that I'll take it at that, and I'll get it fixed.
Oh.
So
perhaps your perseverance was part of the point as well.
Yeah.
Not allowing your external reality to talk you out of it, and remaining at all times, all right, enlightened.
Yeah. I have a few comments.
All right. Allow us to confine it to 1 or 2, and then we will return.
Okay.
Proceed.
Well, it's about this birth experience that I've experienced in the past few weeks.
Oh.
And it was a
rebirth.
Rebirth. Thank you. And I'm the sharing is, of course, too much to share at this point right now, but it was a beautiful experience, and I was blown away by the Christ-like spirit that was there.
Well, so to speak. You are an expression, each and every one of you, of that light.
I know.
Therefore, its brilliance cannot overcome you. Simply illuminate more of yourself. And again, I remind you that that individual did not come down and say anything about follow me and everyone else is in the garbage. No. Said, you are all sons and daughters of God as well. I am simply a living example, and should you choose to embody that, so will you be. Do proceed.
That's exactly what I got.
Oh, thank you. Did not mean to rain on the parade.
No. No, that's what I I was saying I am Christ, basically. I don't live in Waco, Texas, but I was saying that.
Well, the idea is you need not say it and then exclude that everyone else is as well.
No. Yeah.
One of the fullest expressions of understanding the Christ within each and every individual is the willingness to reflect that Christ in each and every individual. One of the, shall I say, part and parcel telltale signs of any true master is that they are only willing to treat you as a master as well. Not take your power, for a master needs no power. They understand they have their own power. So a true master will be the first to reflect back to you that you are a master as well, thereby enabling your headlight to become a beacon as well.
So all of us here are the second coming.
Yes, and that is what we have shared, that it would not be through a single individual, but the emergence of that spirit, which was the purpose of what you call the life of Jesus within each and every individual. And one of the expressions, paradoxically, of this emergence in each and every individual is the willingness to accept every other individual's pace, rate, and timing, which may, in that sense, also mean accepting those who choose not to express any portion of that and remain completely steeped in negativity. That is their choice. Your job, so to speak, is not to change anyone's mind. It is to simply live what you know to be true and attract the individuals who will also benefit from that and then hand them the whole thing. Not a withhold, not putting them in a dependent situation.
And along those lines, I had visions of the earth. And far, far away, I saw the earth. I saw this moving blue veil around the earth. It was a protective veil.
Well, it is the electromagnetic field of the earth. It need not be thought of in terms of protection from the perspective that you need to be protected. Since there is no outside, there is nothing out there to protect yourself from. And the mentality of setting up a protection is the same thing as setting up the attack. Remember, you are all one thing. There is not a protection in here and an attack out here. Everything's within you. So setting up protection is the same as saying, I believe an attack is imminent.
Yes, I say protection, but it...
Understood.
Choice of word, yeah.
Simply utilizing the advantage of bringing that up.
And I became aware and concluded that I am the earth, that I am such a part of Mother Earth, and that we all are, and that Christ consciousness exists in the embodiment of the earth.
Absolutely.
And it was beautiful.
It also will seem to exist what you call enveloping the earth as well. What you call your mass consciousness will, in that sense, seem to be both enveloping the earth and at the same time encompassing it and within it. One expression.
Yeah.
Every planetary body, no matter where, no matter when, is in some way linked to consciousness. There is no such thing as a completely unconscious planetary body. They are expressions of consciousness, different definitions than what you define yourself to be, but understand again from our perspective, everything is consciousness, different densities or densifications, but consciousness no less, down to a rock.
Right. A rock. And it's interesting how Kim and I asked for assistance with many others to be there, and I sensed that there was someone missing, and I had to truly find that missing part, and then it dawned on me it was Christ.
Well,
Jesus the man.
No. It is the Christ within you. In a sense, you may say, perhaps more appropriately, it is you.
Yeah.
Factor yourself in, then nothing will ever be missing.
That's really fun. It's really interesting.
Oh, thank you.
It's beautiful. And then real quick, your presence, Essassani presence there was very moving.
Mm-hmm.
And it was a celebration. And I'm still dabbling around as far as answers on how they were coming in curiosity to see the newborn. And I'm not real clear about that. but I accepted it as a newborn on Essassani. I'm not sure, but that's how I accepted it, and also what according to what happened after that. But that was a beautiful. It was very close to being physical to me, and we were flying at that point. And what was happening?
Well, you have just told me.
We were flying.
You are in that sense tapping in to what you would call probable futures that can become definite futures if you should in that way choose that future. Understand again that there are an infinite number of probable futures, and it is not so much what is going to happen, what is the future, but which one will you choose through your interpretations and subsequent actions.
Okay, then when Kim left the room and I was there alone, all the beings had left. It was dark. I felt the grounding of earth again, which was a beautiful experience. And realizing that I had come home, and then all of a sudden I felt a presence come in the room to my towards my feet, and I came up with Tira, which are some sort of female Essassani, and I felt like she was there just to say thank you very quickly for my participation in the birth. So what is that?
The idea that will be in that sense most useful is to understand that conceptually, no matter what you experienced, what you created was a birth within your present physical self.
Yeah.
Use that childness. Use that reborn freshness in the actions of your life from this point forward. And then you will be creating through your life, through your deeds, the actions that will reflect the vibration that will attract you to that literal future. For now, that will do.
Okay.
Is that understood?
Yes.
Oh.
I really understand all of it.
Bring it back home, as you say.
Yeah.
Although it is all well and good, perhaps a bit fun, perhaps a bit romantic, to explore the heavens through your consciousness, as we have always shared, keep your feet on the ground. Bring it here. Do not theorize about a heaven to go to. Create that heaven on the earth with your feet firmly on the ground.
That's exactly what has happened.
Nice. And that is what will continue to happen if you continue to allow it.
Yes, and it's been beautiful. I feel empowered. I feel it's action. I need action. I want to take action. I'm really ready to go and to move. And it has been so balanced and smooth.
All right. A quick review then. If a circumstance should come along from this point forward, which would seem to not jive with the new you, what will be your new attitude based on what you have learned in this interaction?
Nothing can defeat me, if that's how I used to look at it.
How about everything is synchronicity?
Exactly.
This is perhaps not the only exception. Therefore, I will act upon this opportunity that synchronicity has brought me.
I don't see how negative synchronicity can be in my life anymore.
All right. Then it will not, or it will not have that effect. And any effects that you have gotten from negative actions in the quote-unquote past, now that you are willing to even interpret those effects as positive, changes them, turns them right around. From this point forward, you create a new momentum. We thank you.
Yes.
Shedding. Ace. Female. Greetings.
With what Jim was sharing, I have a question because I was there with him when we did the healing.
Oh.
And I knew that my experience of it was that his soul or his Christ, that he was coming in and that was merging into the earth. But I, at the same time, also was on the ship with him. I mean, and I felt, and I didn't say anything to him because I didn't know if I was making it up, but I saw all the essence.
Understand your higher self is making up your physical self.
Right.
Your life is the result of the imagination of your higher self to begin with.
Yeah.
That is why, in that sense, I said that. Do proceed.
Okay. So I experienced the Essassani beings all around, and I experienced us going on the ship, and I saw a baby being born, and I experienced a big party, and everybody was celebrating. And I saw you, and I saw Bashar, and Aliota, and Shira, and it was wonderful. But it, like you said, it was there, but it was also here. It was to be here on the earth. It wasn't just about going to Essassani, but
Well, since you did in that way create that discrete co-creation experience with us, allow me to ask you a few questions. Did you first of all notice, and by the way, for those of you who may be new to these interactions, Essassani would be the nomenclature of the planet that I come from, and they are speaking about interacting in meditative states with various beings from my society. Did you notice upon the birth, upon the physical birth, that there was not what is called pain to the mother during the birth process?
It wasn't at all. She was very awake and there and part of it. And
did you experience the joy,
Yes.
the flowingness, the allowance,
yes, totally.
the lack of resistance, the
Yeah.
lack of friction?
Totally.
Did you notice in that sense what you may call the lucidity of the newborn?
Totally. Yes. Totally.
Not in that sense held upside down and spanked on the butt. Not in that sense into the world crying, though there was the process of breathing initiated. Did you also notice in that sense lack of what you would call umbilical cord?
Yeah, I did notice that. What was
Oh, well, we no longer in that sense have that expression for the exchange in what you call colloquially the womb is by direct electromagnetic transference and not by, all right, electrochemical means. Therefore, that particular symbol no longer exists upon our planet, and we therefore do not enjoy what you call belly button. All right. Is there anything else?
Yeah, well, I guess that was it with Jim, but it was very beautiful when he asked me to do the healing. I just said yes. I'm supposed to be here with you. It was very synchronistic.
Oh, perhaps a midwife of sorts, yes.
Yeah, that's what it felt like.
But more for his benefit.
Right.
For you will understand that that symbol in that individuals choosing to create the birth process upon our planet is completely self-empowered,
Yes.
is not necessary. There are no hospitals, there are no doctors.
Right.
One of the reasons I asked you these questions was to share with the many of you who are synchronistically attending this interaction that you too can experience the birth process in this way. And it is what you have been taught to expect and the investment that you make in fulfilling that expectation that creates what you consider to be the pain during the birth process and subsequently sometimes the need to actually surgically extract the fetus rather than in that sense the natural process. But as you begin to get in touch with this process as being natural, as you begin to view it as an allowance rather than a forcing, and perhaps a slightly new perspective to many of you, as you begin to understand that the soul that you will be midwifing into physical reality has, as you have all, led many other lives and is not a quote-unquote infant mentality, you may understand that you can begin direct communication with the soul to be born prior to the birth process. And when you do this and literally enlist the aid, assistance, and help of the child itself, you can experience painless birth. Therefore, thank you for the opportunity to express this.
Can I ask a question for myself?
All right, one.
Well, I wanted to share. I went to Atlanta and I was going to go, and I had a great time.
All right.
And
You mean to tell me you actually went and had a great time? Oh my. What a surprise.
And I was concerned about making money there or seeing clients, and I ended up seeing 16 people and had to turn 6 people away.
Oh. How about the other thing or person that you were concerned about?
Well, I'm in love, and
All right.
and I mean, it was great. It was great. I've never felt this way in my life, and not towards another person.
What you call the doubts or the negative trust.
Yeah.
What did you learn about that? For in going down, there was in that terms
Yeah.
what you call some negative anticipation.
Yeah, there was, and I had to keep clearing that constantly. Even when I was there, it would come up, and I'd have to ask myself, what am I choosing to believe? And I would start seeing through veils in the past, and I'd have to keep reminding myself of what you had said before about that the present is experientially of the past. So that I kept clearing that. When I'd clear it, then I'd be present, and then I'd be happy, or I'd be. So what's happening now that since I've come back is I've seemed to have gone into a very big contraction, and I've been crying a lot, and you know, I don't like my life in Connecticut, and I want to move, you know, and
Have a good trip.
I really, and then I know, you know, I know, like, I've talked to him a lot, and I want to go back down there, and I'm, you know, afraid again. You know, there's another special at the airline, right?
Don't miss it.
Well, you can pay as much as you wish.
I know. So there's a special at the airline. So I'm going to call him up, and I guess I'm going back to the fear and holding back again, and it's caused me a lot of pain again, and I don't know.
Well, do understand that you are showing yourself in no uncertain terms just how much power you have. For even knowing all that you know, you will always have the choice and opportunity to choose the negative.
Right.
This may on the surface seem like a curse. It is in fact a blessing. For it shows you that no matter what, you will always have 100% complete choice.
Right.
Simply understand that you are now seeing a pattern to the positive outcomes of your willingness to act in the positive way. And allow that momentum to continue to reinforce itself through your willingness to do these things.
Yeah, I guess the fear keeps coming up, and the negative beliefs keep coming up. I have been choosing not to let them be and not act on them, and I keep doing the positive, but it's really, I'm tired.
Well, question. When the negative comes up, do you say, not now, which effectively pushes it back into the closet, or do you say, all right, negative emotion, have your way with me. Really have your way with me. I will express you. Go on, give me all you got. This is key. Allowing yourself to feel what you have created. A belief creates an emotion. Allowing yourself to have that emotion allows you to access the belief. Squelching that emotion and acting on the opposite may temporarily give you a different effect, but that squelching does not allow yourself to dive into the feeling. You will get to the point where you do say, now what? I have done it. It is done. Now what? Then ask yourself, what must I have believed? Then when the belief comes forth, say, I do believe that. It is not something I prefer, but I believe it. Then give yourself the alternative. Giving yourself the alternative in complete acknowledgement is flow and choice. Giving yourself the alternative in complete denial is exhausting. You only resist yourself. So the minute that you decide, or the second or microsecond that you decide to allow yourself, there is no exhaustion. Exhaustion, tiredness, that type of idea is only, and perhaps again this will be an assistive reminder, from resistance of your flow and resistance of your ecstasy. It is exhausting to be who you are not. Therefore, do the whole process.
I guess I was afraid if I really went into the feeling, I'd get lost. It feels so overwhelming.
May I ask you a question? So what? Where are you going to go? There is no outside. There is no inside. There is nowhere to go. If you get lost and you are the only thing left, you are not lost.
Right.
Therefore, understand again that there is nothing that you can create within your reality that can overcome you. And the timing for having created something is blatant evidence that that is the perfect timing for the doing of that thing. Otherwise, you would be creating things which were extraneous, which had no meaning, which had no reason. And as we have discussed, everything has a meaning and reason. All right. Have a good time. Happy trails, as you say. Over there.
Elan,
One moment, ma'am.
does Essassani have one or two beings of a different vibratory rate or density than the denizens of the planet who act as custodians of the planet, as well as within the planet what I would call planet deities?
Excellent question. Understand that in certain sense, I do not mean decor-wise or layout-wise. In many ways, Essassani, our planet, would be the grand central station of our region. We, in that sense, have a germane population. We are also, perhaps you can say, in contact with many of the quote-unquote forces that you have discussed. But we also have a plethora, a portion, perhaps you can say, of our population that is made up of both individuals from other planetary societies visiting and individuals from many other societies incarnating temporarily, sometimes for a full lifetime, sometimes for several full lifetimes, and sometimes for several hours, days, or weeks. So therefore, there is a very transient idea within our society. Our permanent fixed population, colloquially speaking, would be between perhaps 200 and 250 million, and the many other millions would be comprised of these other beings.
It's my experience that this planet has two beings who dwell within a planet of a different density than ours.
Well, actually, there is an infinite number. When you speak of discrete beings on your wavelength, in the vibratory reality that you define as your reality, were we from our spacecraft to scan your planet, yes, we would find two sentient populations. One of them is your land human, the other would be your water cetacean, dolphin whale. From our perspective, they possess a similar type of sentience as you do, with the ability of self-reflection, with what you sometimes call telepathic ability, and with the ability to, in many ways, though they are more emotionally based, reason to a certain degree.
I am talking about beings of completely different density, like a being in the sun, a being in the sun. The sun is a being.
Nice.
Has
a consciousness.
Has a consciousness. The moon has a consciousness. The earth itself has a consciousness that is comprised of a single female and a single male aspect that are maybe perhaps, I don't know, the density levels at density 5 or 7 or 6, a completely different density level than the two species that you were discussing. They act as it were, as custodians of the planet, as caretakers of the planet. Just as the being in the sun, or the sun as a being, exists at a different density or a different vibratory level than we humans do, or you Essassinis do.
All right, we understand.
Can you verify that? Are there beings like that on the planet of Essassani? Can you know?
Well, there is a similar idea. There is less separation drawn from us in how we relate to it. For instance, in my interacting with you, I would understand what you are calling your earth consciousness to also be part and parcel of your own consciousness. Simultaneously, both, and in matter of fact, all consciousnesses of all living things upon your planet, and at the same time, a discrete, self-aware being as you are. Similar to what you call all that is. All that is, or God, is everything all at the same time and can perceive as everything simultaneously, but at the same time, it can perceive itself as a singular, discrete individual. For as you are made in, perhaps you can say, the image and likeness of God, since you possess the quality of self-awareness and individuality, that has to, in that sense, be a quality of all that is. So therefore, there are similar relationships from planet to planet. Perhaps we do not necessarily break it down as discreetly as you do in terms of separating it out into literal beings. We more would look at it from the overall consciousness standpoint, with which, again, there is not truly a separation even between your own consciousness. But from the perspective that you are sharing what you are saying, I understand, and there is that effect, yes.
So, in the evolution of a soul, for example, I mean, a soul, it's my experience that a soul walking around in a human body of the third density, or whatever the nomenclature is, could have been, and in some cases have been, the soul of a star, the being in the sun, or could have been. On this planet, there are souls walking around that have experienced lives at other densities, lives at other vibratory rates, very vastly different vibratory rates than the third density that we exist in now, and have come back to exist within this third level of density.
To relate back to that level from a different point of view.
Exactly.
Yes, that is absolutely one way to look at it. Yes.
And something that I'm groping with is you mentioned your planet being like a grand central station, the councils of the ascended masters, the white brotherhood, the blue, the councils that comprise the different colors that work on different levels that all come together to be the white brotherhood or the ascended masters, or that level of functioning. That on this planet, when this planet first awakened, when souls first came to this planet to engage in this experiment in free will and total choice and lack of direct connection to the whole universe, where we were separated, we lost our connection from the universe to experience this kind of free choice that we have and disconnectedness. That there was a council, an original council, a circle of light that came here to awaken on this planet, and that this council needs to reconvene. That there needs to be a reconnection of these ancient souls who have been here for the duration in the awakening on this planet that's going on right now. Does this make any sense to you?
Well, again, that is one way to look at it, but again, does employ certain degrees of separation. Now, what you consider to be these councils, which would appear from your point of view to be a hierarchical structure, first of all, in general, will represent a regulating frequency or pulse more than an actual council. And from their perspective, there absolutely is no hierarchy. There is a complete equality. So sometimes in using the verbiage that you have chosen, there are certain connotations which we will not necessarily agree with. It is far, shall I say, more loose than you might imagine. There is no this or that needs to happen in order for there to be a complete transformation. What in general will occur is as that happens, that will simultaneously just automatically occur. Any of the regroupings, any of the reunions, any of the checkings in order to, in that sense, again, perhaps you can say oversee. But because you do have complete will, there is no shepherding going on, really. You actually are your own free will soul. So these are statements and expressions, and to some degree do occur, but nothing is necessitated on their occurrence. Does that make sense?
Yes, it makes beautiful sense. Thank you.
Oh, thank you.
We started to talk about this the first time we communicated. The idea that as at this time third density souls existing in third density bodies, as we live on this planet at the density that this planet exists, you indicated that we can be free of others' negativity, and I think you also indicated that we can be free of the mass consciousness. That as souls, as individuals, we can be free of the mass consciousness that we exist within.
Well, you can be free from any germane seeming negative experiential reality that you would feel is part and parcel of the mass consciousness. You will be in contact with it, but it contains the complete plethora of negative and the complete plethora of positive. So from within that soup, should you choose in that sense to embody the positive, then the negative portion of the mass consciousness will still be there. But that will not be the portion that you seem to interact with, and it will make little or no sense to those choosing to experience and to create positive. So in other words, again, as you expand, you are more aware of negative and positive. How is this possible? One may ask. It is possible that your actions will choose what you experience, but you will still be aware of all the rest. So if you choose positive action, positive interpretation, you then get positive experience in 100% proportion, but your expanding awareness of negativity, for instance, since it does exist within this reality as an option, will be through observing others who are choosing to experience that negativity. So you do not escape the mass consciousness. You are still, in that sense, connected to it, but you are embodying one portion of it, thereby having another portion be somewhat irrelevant to your experience. So it is not getting rid of, it is a shifting of emphases, a shifting of perspective.
Okay, there's one belief system I'd like to explore. You touched on this before when we talked about protection. it seems to me that what's going on the planet, in my connection with the custodians of the planet and with all of the species that live on the planet, is that there is, in some kind of sense, I don't understand, a loss of protection. That whole species are no longer able to cope with their environment, and the things that were harmless to them before have wiped them out. That the Earth has the ozone layer, the Earth has the soil, the Earth has the water, and all of these things are losing their vital strength because of the pollutants and the things that are affecting the chemicals, the things that are affecting the planet, and that there is, in some sense, a protective mechanism that is weakening. The AIDS is the immune system of people is being attacked, and this understanding, I don't, in light of what you said about, there is no protection, or we don't need protection, we are all one, which I understand. I don't understand this phenomenon. It is my experience that the planet is under duress.
Well, do understand again that everything will be, in your experience, a product of your interpretation. Now, one way to look at what you call diminishing ozone is, yes, there is less of the protective aspect of the atmosphere. Another way to look at diminishing ozone is that you are now ready and able as a society to absorb that much more energy directly from your central sun. The individuals who decide, my protection is gone, again, create the attack and create, in fact, their protection being gone. They get that prophecy fulfilled. Those who understand that the opening of your ozone can also be likened, utilizing again the analogy of the consciousness of your planet as the opening of the crown chakra of your planet itself. And therefore the timing of it, meaning that must be the timing whereby you can now, in that way, interact with that much more of the energy of your sun. That person who makes that designation has a completely different attitude, walks around differently, interacts with the sun differently, gets a different effect. All of these things exist, and it is simply a matter of what you emphasize in.
So the disappearance of whole species
has been going on throughout your history prior to what you call humans upon your planet in roughly the same proportion as is occurring now.
Now, do you have any data or information on a possible major shift in the obliquity of our planet? The other planets in our solar system go through major shifts in their angle towards the sun, and we don't do that. Our planet doesn't do that because
well, it has.
It has in the past, but in the recent past, the moon has held the planet stable.
Yes, but there is what you call a particular wobble to the spin of your Earth, you refer to as precession, which actually, along approximately a 26,000-year cycle, will actually slightly change the tilt of that angle. If what you are asking is, will there be a polar physical shift? No, not in your foreseeable future. There are, from time to time, electromagnetic shifts, which in that sense maintain the position physically of the planet and simply are a reversal of what you call the poles, which then result in a plethora of, shall I say, phenomena.
And if we were to look at the sun as a being and we were to assign a density to that being that the sun is, our sun in our solar system,
then you would only be interacting with the portion of that being in that density. For it is transcendental and exists within all the densities simultaneously. You would simply be singling out as a prism one wavelength.
As we all do.
Yes.
However, we mostly inhabit these bodies.
Well, not technically speaking, from your point of view. But from the point of view of your higher self, this is but a mere wink in the eye of the life of your soul.
Thank you.
Oh, thank you. You created it all. At this timing, we will pause for a short break to be determined the length by you and resume contact at that time. All right, I'll say, before we continue, next month's interaction, or this month's, will be entitled Desire and Allowance. Two primary mechanisms for creating in your reality. We thank you for the suggestion. Proceed with sharing. Ace. And to you.
We've had a movie that's pretty popular on our planet right now, Elan, called Fire in the Sky.
All right. Describe for those who do not know.
Okay. It's a story about a man named Travis Walton who was working in a national park in Arizona quite some time ago. I'm not sure of the exact date. It might have been about 20 years ago. And he had an abduction or a detainment experience that was pretty much a negative interpretation as displayed in this movie.
Well, the interpretation displayed is based on a negative interpretation by that individual, yes.
That's correct. And I wanted to ask you about a few of the things that he experienced aboard the ship that took me somewhat by surprise in seeing this movie.
All right. Perhaps we can shed some light.
Okay. After his abduction, he woke up in a thing that somewhat resembled a beehive type structure, very, very large. And he was in one of the cells in the walls of this structure, let's say, and kind of encapsulated in a cocoon of somewhat gelatin type materials.
That will be, in that sense, an interpretation and not literal. What you call the hive symbol will represent a style of, shall we say, community, perhaps hive-like mentality in some senses, but the imposition of the membrane in that sense is somewhat, shall I say, Hollywood.
Okay. And this organic gelatin type material that seemed to be prevalent aboard, what would that interpretation be of?
There are many different substances aboard the craft. Some in that sense that fit a similar description will be used for sustenance. In that sense, again, we are not exactly sure which one you are referring to. But perhaps symbols were, again, mixed for more exciting presentation.
Well, that's possible. That's happened a lot in this movie. And,
Nice.
and also that he may not have any kind of reference to put a label on a lot of these things.
Exactly. So therefore, there was the perception, perhaps in that way, of, again, and I am being very colloquial, a hive-like mentality being translated into a literal hive. But that is an interpretation, and understand that most of that individual's recollections are via what you have recalled as regressive hypnotism.
Okay, one of the other things he experienced aboard the ship, it appeared that he saw two types of beings aboard the ship. One, the type of being that we're more familiar with that looked more like the Zeta type of being, which in my wife seeing this movie had the interpretation that these beings had also been detained or abducted and might be possibly pleading for his help at one point in this movie. The other types of beings did not look like what we would expect the Zeta type beings to look like.
Describe.
They had smaller, narrower eyes, more like a human type eye, kind of a rough gray skin, somewhat short. Nothing that I've really seen any pictures of or anything before myself.
Before you proceed, understand in general what you term reticulum population will in general be comprised of three distinct body types that are similar in size, though differing in coloration and differing in what you would call bodily composition. There is also a fifth race of beings that we will not name, but the idea is that they also will appear a bit more humanish and will in that sense very often seem to be in a coordinating aspect of the interaction. There are also, understand in no uncertain terms, due to the hybridization process taking place, many different varieties of the hybridization process with your planet, but also with some other species and civilizations as well. So therefore, many of these symbols may have been beholden and witnessed and will be interpreted again along the lines of least resistance for any individual. In that case, that individual had relatively little or no background to which to compare what he was experiencing.
Yeah, very good explanation. One of the impressions that this movie gave the viewer was that it's possible that some of the detainments and abductions that these extraterrestrials took part in, that the people they took did not come back. There was a lot of debris floating around the ship, like sneakers and broken eyeglasses and various dirty debris, let's say, that gave the impression that some of the people taken did not come back.
This is very rare. However, it does occur, and generally for several reasons. One of the reasons will be by distinct agreement from the individual consciously. However, more than not, it is unconsciously the agreement whereby the individual has structured his life upon the planet in such a way to have detached themselves from what you would generally call family structure, friend structure, and therefore have unconsciously agreed in that sense to, shall I say, participate in the interactions from a perspective, all right, more of host, in a sense, allowing for the comfortable visitation via having other humans around who seem to be calm.
I see. Okay, well that wasn't really depicted in this particular movie.
Well, now understand the individuals experiencing it will have varying degrees of interpretation, and if they themselves feel they are being abducted against their will, their interpretation will come from this perspective. And they will look, and what they see will be the evidence through what they already believe.
My own perspective of this, Elan, that I wanted to bring up is that there's a couple possible different scenarios of realities that could exist in a situation like this movie, where it could be his negative interpretation of this experience, which he doesn't have anything to really put a label on it. Or it could be a marauding, very negative type of extraterrestrial population that's traveling the universe, coming across this planet, basically seeing biological material it wants, taking it in a manner where it's not functioning with any integrity whatsoever, any compassion whatsoever. I mean, that reality could exist.
Well, that reality absolutely does exist.
Yeah.
What we are sharing with you is the symbols that you are referring to are not an example of them, but may appear from the individuals undergoing the process out of fear, out of happening to them, out of negative synchronicity, that they would be a representation of such a race. Again, though, from our perspective, that is not the case, though we understand fully how that realization was derived.
Okay, that's what I wanted to see. That answered my question perfect on that. One other quick question on another topic about energy on your planet. We know we've discussed you harness the magnetic field of the planet for energy. I just wondered if you might comment on if there's any use of solar photovoltaic panels on your planet, or extraction of hydrogen from water to be used in any kind of a fuel source.
In the way that you mean in general, no, though there will be overtones upon the crystalline structures that we grow upon energy templates that in that sense contain embedded within them what you would call the circuitry, but this is very colloquial, an aspect of being able in that sense to also convert and utilize sunlight. So to some degree, the solar technology to some degree is utilized, but not primarily. You will find in your society, however, that there has been much progress made in this regard. Much of this technology is currently being suppressed, but you will find it to be an efficient means of harnessing electricity upon your planet in the near future.
Okay, very good. I'm experimenting with solar power myself and having quite a bit of success. One of the things I've been doing is extracting some hydrogen from water itself, and not, just playing with it, not really knowing what to do with it to harness it. I'm still experimenting, but is there any value on your planet or anybody else's planet in using hydrogen as a...
Well, absolutely, but in general, it will be surpassed in simpler, less, shall I say, dangerous technology.
Very good. Thank you very much.
Oh, thank you. Sure. Nice.
To follow up on a question, part of Tom's question, you said that there are other civilizations that the Zeta Reticulum are interbreeding with, so to speak?
In a sense, yes.
So, in the future, did they create a viable hybrid society?
Well, more than one.
Oh, so
These are the cousins to which we refer. You have perhaps assumed that they would only be of human descendancy,
Yeah, I did.
but that is not altogether accurate.
oh, that's great.
Those are our closest, perhaps you can say, cousins.
Oh, okay. What other civilizations are they?
Ones that we have not discussed.
Obviously.
Good try, Mayor.
The idea will be that in general, what we are speaking of will represent society similar to your own, not quite a member, if you will, of our association of many societies, and therefore it is too early in that sense to make the identification. They still have free will. They still have certain choices that they also may make.
Okay.
Thank you for
Thank
asking.
you.
Would you like a replacement question?
No, that's okay.
All right.
Thanks.
Shedding.
Elan,
Ace, back there.
perhaps you can clarify something.
Perhaps.
When you're saying if you have a similar action in a similar situation, then you should expect a similar result.
Well, in a sense. The idea is to explain individuals will very often perform the same action expecting a different result, which is not likely. But in the very same circumstance, the simple performance of even a slightly different action can only cause the creation of a different result. Is there something specific you are looking for within this?
It's confusing me because I don't see how any situation could be the same. And then, therefore, how could an action be the same if it's at a different timing?
Understood. The idea that we were speaking of is positive versus or negative action in a circumstance. So, for instance, an individual comes along and, as you say, upon your planet, yells at you. You have an interpretation, I will assume, to be negative. In general, not particularly necessarily you, but other individuals then yell back. And the result in general will be this back and forth thing that happens each time. The first time you, when it's your turn, don't yell back, you get a completely different result in a seemingly similar situation. Is that clear?
Yeah, I don't see, though, in practicality that that's always true, because I think that, say someone did yell at you and you ignored them, then perhaps they would continue to yell, but maybe at some point then they wouldn't. I don't see it as being that cut and dry.
All right. Well, that will always be your prerogative. What I am simply sharing is that if you have a seemingly same old interpretation, but do not perform the same old seemingly action, you cannot help but get a different result in a seemingly similar situation. That is the only point being made. If this is not clear, please continue.
I think it should be, but I don't quite get it. I guess that's it, because I don't see how it could be the same or I could see similar, yes, but the same, no, because...
All right, then simply substitute similar in the sentence. The idea is if you do something different, particularly of the opposite polarity, something positive, you will get a positive result. That is the point.
Maybe if I had something more relevant to me, then it would make more...
All right. If something comes up, please share.
Okay, thanks.
Female.
Hi, Elan.
Greetings.
I wanted to thank you for popping in on my meditation about a month ago. And I have a couple of questions about it.
Oh.
I had borrowed a tape from Andrew about channeling, and I listened to it several times, and was doing one of the meditations that they have on the tape, and in it, you visualize a vase in front of yourself, and then visualize yourself as the vase, as a technique to, I guess, become more familiar with
identification, but also being a receptacle.
Right.
All right.
Yes. In the midst of the meditation, it says they tell you to describe yourself. And, I described a couple physical characteristics, and then the next thing that I said was, I'm where to become one. And, which was relevant because the vase that I visualized was an Indian wedding vase, which has two necks. And, as I sat there in the meditation, then I could hear you. And it was like you were talking through like a radio in my head.
Well, in a sense, yes.
Yeah.
You turned the dial and in that way got our frequency.
Mm-hmm. Which was real exciting. It was real neat, and it was a surprise. And,
Well, it is a two-way radio, do understand.
Mm-hmm. Well, since then, I've also gone into a fairly deep meditative state with a friend present, and I know that I was speaking words, and I don't think they were mine, but I'm really not sure, and I was wondering if you had any suggestions that would assist me in enhancing that and like fine-tuning a little bit better.
Oh, first of all, understand, it would be therefore impossible to remove yourself from the process. It is coming through you. So yes, it is your words, but maybe perhaps being utilized in a slightly different way. Second of all, you may wish in that way, next time you do such a thing, to employ what you call a tape recorder, so that you can hear for yourself what is said. For as I seemingly speak through Andrew, and you assume you are all hearing the exact same thing, perhaps you may wish to pull aside after one of these interactions and ask each other what you actually heard. You will find each individual caters what I am saying to what it will behoove them to hear. So therefore, even if you allow another individual to tell you what you said, it would not be your own interpretation necessarily at all of what you actually think was said. So therefore, the tape recorder in that sense will provide common ground, if you will. That simple suggestion will allow you to perform the next step.
Okay. One other thing about that also is that in this, the time when I was in meditation with my friend there, as I got deeper into a meditative state, I felt I had been concentrating on allowance and allowing whatever happened to happen. And I found, as I went deeper, there was something in me there that didn't want to let go and didn't want to relinquish control.
What, in that sense, was it afraid it would find?
Well, I'm not sure. I think it's that fear's been popping up in a lot of other places in my life as a result.
Nice. And simply your willingness to look at it, feel it when it comes up, and discuss with yourself, again, similar to an earlier conversation, where do I feel I could even be lost to, will allow you again to realize yourself as the source, and you cannot be lost.
Okay.
Is that of service?
Yes. Yeah.
Well, thank you.
One other thing, I also felt that, or let me just ask a question. Does it benefit someone in assisting the channeling process to rid the body of various toxins and...
Completely, and I mean completely, up to you. It is not a prerequisite in the process itself, but if one imposes the belief that it is, then it becomes so. So, for instance, our particular interaction with Andrew is completely unconditional. There are no stoic exercises, breathing, types of eating, types of sleeping that we request from him. It is an unconditional understanding, and therefore he need not do anything other than have the desire and the allowance for the communication to take place. So you can, in that sense, be that loose about it, or if in that sense you wish to impose a rigid set of standards, can do that as well. But when that rigid set of standards seems to be the only way to do it, what I am actually saying is that that is self-imposed. And when you impose that set of standards, it seems like that's the only way, but you need not do it. It is not inherently built into the agreement. And because a master will reflect back to you that you are already a master, again, there is nothing you need to do. All right.
One last question about that. Would it be beneficial for me to? I think I've been concentrating on the two spirit guides that I have really been actively aware of. Would it assist me in any way to just expand that allowance and like whatever shows up, shows up?
Well, it may be that you strengthen the connection to those two, but that more open attitude will obviously then, yes, give you a star-studded show.
Okay. That's good. Thanks a lot.
Oh, thank you. Over there, female.
Hi, Elan.
Greetings.
Thank you for coming. I wanted to share some positive synchronicity.
Oh, thank you. On the subject, all right?
I had been interested for some time in writing a book, and one day I decided to do it. So I wrote the first page, picked a title, and that same day a card came in the mail advertising a course in becoming a writer.
Oh, what a coincidence. Not an accident.
I know. So I sent the card in and received the literature.
Now, before you proceed, synchronicity presented itself. You acted upon the opportunity that synchronicity brought.
Yeah.
What happened?
The card came. I acted on, the literature came in response to the card, sending the card in. And I filled everything out, wrote the essays and whatnot, sent that back in, and I qualified for the course. And so I had saved just enough money to pay for the course, and that I had been saving for anything, for just something. It was just the right amount. Also, a year ago, my husband bought a word processor, which never came out of the box. So I took it out of the box and synchronistically started immediately learning how to use it, which I love to do. And now all of a sudden I'm meeting people who are authors. And I see this, and I love that. I've already sent in the first lesson. I really enjoy it. I love it. And I see it as a vehicle, future vehicle, not too far future, to share the information I'm learning from Essassani.
All right.
And the whole
The information that you are remembering from within yourself with a little nudge from us. At least let's get that straight.
Yes.
All right.
Yes. So it all is very exciting, and I'm enjoying everything about it. And it's like I see it as my next career, because taking care of people I've been doing for a long time. I see synchronicity in the whole thing happening just as it was meant to happen.
Oh,
I'm creating it to happen.
so now, in other words, rather than taking care of other people, you will take care of yourself and provide them a means to take care of themselves.
Right.
We thank you for your expression of the willingness to embody what we are discussing in these interactions. For the bottom line is it is that simple. And your willingness to act upon the opportunities, not allow them to fly by in that sense, will always have a positive result. Not always in the direction that you may expect, but always in the direction to enable you to continue to do the things that excite you. We thank you.
I'd also like to share with you that the friend of mine who is experiencing cancer has been in Florida the whole time since we last spoke. And she comes back today. Well, she may be back now, but it was today that she was coming back. But the people that are close to her tell me that she's doing really, really well. Her attitude is extremely positive. She's having the chemotherapy, but is also playing tennis every day, which is unheard of.
Well, not anymore.
Right. And I intend definitely to get together with her.
Perhaps you will find again the timing to be synchronicity.
Yes.
The readiness factor, as you say. but you will find a certain receptivity. Again, maybe or maybe not what you expect, but simply allow yourself to share with no insistence. And simply because it has worked for you and it is a gift you wish to give, allowing them to do whatever they wish with it. We thank you.
Thank you.
Oh. Is there anyone else in this general vicinity with a question?
Yeah, I'd like to ask a question.
Oh. Now you cannot say you never get to ask one, can you?
A while ago, we were talking about consciousness, and we were talking about bees. And I told you I read in a book that bees are a physical organ of a consciousness in another reality, and you said that was right.
Well, that is one way to look at it, but they are also distinct in them of themselves in your reality.
Okay.
So it is both.
Well, what I want to know is, are we creating some other reality as part of ourselves?
Oh, absolutely. And you experience your connection to it in what you generally refer to as your dream reality. In fact, you are often also, and I mean this literally, guides for other consciousness in other civilizations, other types of densities of reality in that dream state.
Okay, think about that. Thanks.
Oh, is that all?
Yes.
For now.
Oh, wait, no, I would like to ask one other thing.
Go right ahead. What a coincidence.
Okay, the place that Ken talks about in Southbury, and I talked to you about, I was thinking, there's the vortex at Henrietta's property. When I went there last week, we did a meditation, and she said in the meditation, imagine another being. I imagined another being, and it was a friendly exchange, except the other being seemed to be very, very agitated, and I got this terrible pain in my head. So I decided to imagine the other being is gone. I did. The other being went away, and the pain went away. And then I thought, well, now I can hear what the being's saying to me. So, and I had the being come back, and the pain came back and got excruciating again. So I had the being go away, and I didn't know what the message of the being was.
Well, to some degree, you were experiencing the results of your resistance to your interpretation of that being's agitation. Did that translate? Therefore, what was your reasoning for assuming that the being was agitated?
I was completely perplexed.
All right. Do you understand that sometimes when interacting with me, individuals will interpret my tone or perhaps my emphatic nature as being agitated? But yet, when then dialoguing with me, will understand that I have ultimate patience and am never in that sense agitated. The point is that when they believe that I am, they create a particular effect. Therefore, perhaps you may wish to view this, enter this situation in a slightly more open posture and simply understand the difference between emphatic and agitated. All right? We thank you. Shutting. Ace.
Good evening.
And to you, good day, we thank you.
Getting back to the subject of the evening, this week we experienced some extreme agitation and negativity, and there was a lot of people laid off where I work.
Oh, that will always be one way to interpret a transformation. The individuals who interpret it as what a bummer will in that sense create the action of frustration and agitation. Other individuals will interpret it as an obvious, blatant opportunity from the universe saying time to do something else. And therefore then giving those individuals the opportunity to do something else they desire to.
That's what I was looking at. And what I want was help in being able to get that message to these people, because a lot of them did take it as, oh, poor me, look what happened to me, bad timing, da-da-da-da. They said they weren't going to do this. There was a lot of frustration and anger involved in it.
Were you physically laid off yourself?
No, it wasn't.
Oh.
Even though I wouldn't have cared whether I was or not. That's,
well, if you were, your, shall I say, actions as in that sense, representing it, not agitating you, would have been perhaps the clearest example for them. In the meantime, perhaps you can simply share what we have said, though to some that may seem a bit thin.
Yeah. I was trying to convey it across, saying maybe it's a blessing in disguise, you're going to be able to go back.
Well, it is a blessing in disguise if they choose to view it that way. It is a curse if they choose to view it that way. It is simply both.
Right.
So perhaps that is what you can share, that it is one complete, whole, unbroken event containing all possibilities. They get to choose.
Yeah. All right, thanks. I have another quick question. Mine was wandering the other night, and what I wanted to know is, does the all it is ever have any surprises?
From one perspective, yes. From another perspective, no. From the perspective of all-knowing, all-seeing, what can surprise you? You already know it all. You've already seen it all.
Right.
From the perspective of separation and apparent, perhaps you can say, degrees of amnesia, you are a living example of the surprise within all that is. Each time you are surprised.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Oh, thank yourself.
Thank you.
Shut it.
Elan,
Ace, man.
Thank you. I'll be brief.
All right.
Share. But I have some direct questions, kind of by proxy from Darlene.
All right. We will allow for one. So pick the best.
Darn.
Now, you do not think this is the one extraneous thing in creation, do you?
No, I really.
Allow for the synchronicity of my allowance of one.
Yeah. I was even thinking about that I wouldn't even be able to get any of these questions in, so I was prepared for that.
Well, all right. You're one above.
I'll be real direct. It's about the chambers and that subject, and specifically the ones in the Fairfield area. Who built the chambers? Can you be that direct?
I will be direct to allow you to understand that though they were perhaps in many ways physically built by what you would call early Native American population, that the influences on this population and the reasons for the building were, shall I say, to some degree, containing extraterrestrial overtones. Some of the technology through which some of the building was, in that sense, formed, utilized such technology. That is as specific as I will get now.
The migration of the Druid or Celtic from Europe
is one of the influences only, and not by any means fully responsible for that manifestation.
So let's say on a timeline, 500 to 800 AD.
Our perception is that they are slightly older than that.
Ah.
But some of the usage that you are discussing would be within that time frame. In other words, after built, they were utilized by many different generations for different reasons.
Yes. And it's along the...
They were not originally intended as burial sites.
No, they were sacred sites.
Resonating chambers.
Yes. And on that, along the same line, resonating chambers from each one to another, creating this circle of communication.
Well, harmonic, yes.
Okay. And then knowing, how did they know how to plant them individually, physically, where to put them?
Well, this is where some of the influence comes from, so to speak, above. And you will find many of the ancient structures upon your planet to only make sense from the sky.
Yes. Okay.
Now, we have discussed to some degree what you call your Great Pyramid. But what we have not always discussed is the fact that one of its purposes was literally as a marker from the sky. As it did in that way, not only enhance the electromagnetic field of the planet, but also in that sense align itself with what you colloquially refer to as the cardinal points.
So if I drew them out, these chambers out on the map, which has been done, there is some sort of some sort of an alignment there or some sort of symbol.
Well, it would shed a different light upon it, I will say.
I see. Okay. And if I may, at the end of this interaction, just add, I want a little home fun with another question that I ended before.
Maybe.
All right.
We shall see. We thank you.
Thank you.
Shutting.
Elon,
Ace.
I have I'm in a part of the book, Bashar, from Bashar, from Bashar's tapes, I guess. And the part is going from third density into fourth is the only thing I have to get is that the present has nothing to do with the past.
Now, the present is not in the present, experientially a result of the past. Now, what this means is this. Perhaps in a linear progression, what you would call point A may lead to point B, may lead to point C. So there is a seeming cause and effect relationship that occurs. However, when you are at point C, B and A no longer have any effect on C whatsoever unless you determine that they do and through your actions then make the connection. So I am not saying that a past may not seemingly through cause and effect lead to a present result. What I am saying and what we are saying is that the present is not experientially affected by that past until you recreate that past in the present. You always only exist right here, right now, in the right here and right now moment. 5 minutes ago has no effect on right now until you say, what I am doing right now, I am doing because of what happened 5 minutes ago. Then you create the effect, you create the connection, and then you create an apparency that it is, yes, a result of that past, and I am bound to that past. But if you can understand that each now moment is unique, each now moment is complete, that you only ever exist right now, nothing has any effect on right now but what you say right now, what you choose right now. If one of those things that you choose is a rationale or an excuse to perform particular actions because you have done so in the past, then there may seem to be an effect from the past, but you literally have recreated that effect right here, right now. So it is not even an effect from the past. It is a recreation of a seeming past in the present. In general, that past is not even accurately reflective of what actually happened. It is your version in the moment of that past. Does this make more sense?
Yes.
Therefore, if you simply exist in the moment and do not spend that moment reflecting on a perceived past, projecting a perceived future, you can actually see what's right in front of your face. And that is all that matters in any now given moment. What's right in front of you. As you begin to utilize the tools that are right in front of you, perhaps, let's say, choosing from those opportunities with your excitement and acting on them with your integrity, then you create new effects that have nothing to do with the past. And as the past becomes less and less relevant, actually begin to seemingly lose memory of the past itself, for it no longer has any relevance to the present. So therefore, a loss of memory in this way will very often begin to occur when you live completely in the now moment. If in the now moment something from the past will be of service to you, then you may bring it up as a memory and then you can recreate it in the moment. But once you begin to function in the moment, the garbage, so to speak, from the past no longer comes up. Does that make sense?
Yes.
That is one of the differences between living in third density, which is the general description of your reality, though you are now transiting into fourth, and fourth density, which is still a physical reality whereby you no longer express the degree of separation and therefore no longer express the degree of limitation. And when you, in a given now moment, bind yourself to a perceived past, that is a limitation. When you simply act from what is available in the moment, that is integration and complete freedom. Do you understand?
Yes.
Therefore, nothing in your past has any hold on you until you say so. And when it then does, it only has a hold on you because you say so. This is what we mean. Can you use that?
Very much so.
Well, is there something that you perceived occurred in your past that prevents you from being who you are in the present? Or up till now has seemed to?
Yeah.
All right. Then understand that any moment you refer back to that, you are recreating that and bringing it into this moment, and you no longer need to. Simply when something comes up, ask yourself the simple grounding question. Can I do something about this right now? If the answer is yes, do it. You're grounded. You're in the moment. If the answer is no, put it aside and see what is there, and then choose from what is there, perform that action, you're grounded. Grounded is simply choosing from what is available in any given moment and acting. All right?
Yes.
We thank you. There will be time for but a few more sharings. Sharing. Ace. Greetings.
How are you?
Perfect. As are you all.
I have a very short sharing.
All right.
Actually, it's a thought, and the closest word I can find for it is a smile.
Oh, thank you.
And it is for all of you over there and all of us here. Yes.
It is received, and understand is one of the simplest vibrations for us to receive. We thank you for shining so brightly. Shutting. Ice.
In the process of integration, the transition that we're currently undergoing, we are each and all of us working on achieving a Christ consciousness.
Well, if you look at it that way, you create a lot of work. If you understand that you already are the Christ consciousness and simply be that way, allow it. There is nothing to obtain. It is simply the allowance of what already exists within you. You may seem to then not need to create a process. Every time you unconditionally love yourself or someone else, every time you simply refuse to judge from that unconditional love, every time you render service not at the cost of yourself, but also in service to yourself, you are being that spirit in action.
I guess that was the wrong choice of words.
Well, it was the perfect choice of words, allowing me to demonstrate that point. Thank you.
As the planet progresses, it is my understanding that groups will form to exemplify the process of integration.
Well, that will be the effect, but it will not be so mindful. Simply as you become that, you attract other individuals of like mind and become friends.
One of my questions is, I've been doing a lot of reading about the seven rays as it's been written many times. Mm-hmm. Do you see that is this description, or, well, I'd have to give it, but is the concept of the seven rays influential on how these groups form?
In general, it will be more an expression and statement of them, though it is often perceived to be the other way around. And that will generally be our perspective in any matter. There are no controlling features, but there are features that then automatically express themselves in a certain way once you make the decision. So you can affect that in a sense.
So you're saying that simply there will be an attraction between those elements that are of a similar range?
The idea is when you are unconditionally loving to yourself and others, you are simply the white light containing all seven yous.
How then do you see the process of the formation of groups further the evolution of the planet?
Well, again, they are a statement of the evolution, not necessarily cause of it. They are a result of it that then may serve to then reinforce and enhance the transformation itself, but again are more an expression of it, a byproduct.
As the as people become more aware of this process and the Christ within them, they tend to gravitate into groups.
Well, at first they tend to be the fullest them they can be, not feeling any need for such a group, for they already feel complete. And then the individuals that they attract will reflect that completeness in them back to the individual. So it is not a group that forms a support, but is a group of complete beings who then reinforce that completeness.
So would you say that the groups themselves are not so much to serve as a function, but
Well, again, they then will serve to reinforce the very transformation itself, yes, by being more of a cohesive, visible symbol.
Right. How would you,
unconditionally love yourself and others and keep your eyes open?
That wasn't my question, but that's very good advice.
Oh, thank you.
Okay, well,
Simply completing the thought. Do proceed.
yes. I was just wondering, I guess you've answered the question. I saw that there would be a process that each group would serve to facilitate the awareness of those external to that particular group at any moment.
Well, again, this is automatic. As each of these groups, both positive and negative, comes to each of your individual awarenesses, you then have a particular impression. You then have an interpretation. You then perform certain actions based on what you have seen. So all of these groups have subtle effects. The negative groups will attract other individuals still seeking and still exploring negativity, while generally at the same time, positive groups will view them as an alternative they definitely don't wish in that sense to partake of. So everyone is of service to everyone else, no exceptions.
Then as you have this, say, separation as groups become this positive or negative, you're saying that the planet will eventually migrate into two groups, one of a positive nature and one of a negative nature?
There may be that apparency at first. However, what will occur, and again, I understand that this does not jive with your general understanding, is that you will literally split off two parallel Earths. And that one Earth will perceive everyone upon it has this negative perspective, and the other one will actually appear to embody simply the positive.
Could you speak a little more about that particular process of splitting?
Yes, once realities are that dissimilar that they no longer would be congruent to each other, they literally split off in frequency. And each Earth perceives itself in its own continuum and does not notice, shall I say, the split. Simply, for instance, if you should choose positivity, attract a positive nucleus, you will begin to see more positive news, shall we say, as an example, on your television, and eventually the negativity will seem to disappear into the woodwork, depending upon the degree to which you embody that positivity 100%. Many individuals will still choose to embody a percentage of positive and a percentage of negative. That allows them to exist on a third world that contains both.
So then are you saying that an infinite number of Earths will then result depending on what percentage of positive or negative quality?
Not only am I saying that, but I am saying there already are an infinite number of Earths, and there are already an infinite number of probable past Earths as well. This gets very complex from the finite point of view. For you are discussing infinity from finite terms.
Well, that's why we like asking those questions.
Oh, yes.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
Yes, it does.
All right. Even if it didn't, I would be satisfied.
And even if it didn't, Alana, I too would be satisfied.
You will always rise to the occasion. We thank you. Shutting. Ace.
I'd like to share some positive synchronicity that happened in my life recently.
Oh, not you too? All right.
Yeah. About a week and a half ago, my cousin's 6-year-old son was diagnosed with a malignant brain tumor. He was taken into the hospital.
Now, by the way, when you say that, listen to the response. Not everyone considers it a neutral symbol, but you proceed.
They took him in. They expected the surgery to take anywhere from 6 to 10 hours, and it wound up that they were closing after less than 4. It was something that could be aspirated, sucked out, didn't have to be cut. He was off of pain medication within 3 days, and they feel they got 99% of the tumor out. And his prognosis is excellent, and I think he's already been released from the hospital.
Well, all right. You need not take any of, again, the interpretations as the way it is. And in that sense, obviously, he did not. Interestingly enough, generally humans will attribute brain sucking to aliens, but it is your own society.
Yeah, and several members of the family, aunts and whatnot, flew out to California to be there. And I called a couple days after the operation, and it was a real neat experience because their attitude and their demeanor was completely unlike anything you would have expected in a family where someone just had brain surgery, because they were on the phone saying, "Oh, things are great here. We are just so pleased, and things just couldn't be better." And it was just a real neat example of how you can interpret something in a very negative way and expect and probably receive negative results, or how you can trust that it's for a reason and trust in timing, which did play a part in him being in this particular place at the time when the cancer was diagnosed. And it was really a very surprising experience for me.
All right. We thank you for that expression, and also for the expression of those in this audience as well that went, "Oh," and also then went, "Ah."
Yes. That's it.
We thank you.
Thank you.
Sharing.
Elan,
Ice.
I decided to ask a question.
More. We thank you.
Is there anything besides positive and negative? Not neutral, but
There are other expressions that in that sense do not translate within the positive and negative. One that will in that sense make sense is a whole that contains the both, therefore not neutral, but is one expression, without the need in that sense for the differentiation, but still having the ability for receptivity and assertivity. But in general, fundamental, foundational reality definitions that will vary so far from that will not translate into your reality. There are literally, shall I say, and this becomes again difficult to translate, but what you would call physical societies with more than the two sexes. That will vary. We are aware of one that contains what you call up to 4.
that's very interesting. I'm thinking
We think so.
pyramid, and if we say we are at the base of the pyramid because we experience this polarity reality, would maybe the top of the pyramid, is that what I'm thinking about when I say that if there's something besides negative and positive?
Again, that is what you might call the balance between the two, which contains them both. It is the single point, and no longer in that way expressing separation or polarity. To utilize your pyramid example.
Where the pendulum is still.
Repeat.
Where the pendulum is still.
Still.
Well, in a sense, that is one way to view it, and where it moves at infinite speeds is another way to view it. You are speaking now about things which are arbitrarily dependent upon other symbols. Still compared to what? Moving compared to what? So it becomes arbitrary.
Thank you. That
That has confused you even more. All right.
Yes, I was about to say that. Thank you for raising so many more questions.
Oh, 'tis my pleasure. Ace.
I have a question about when.
Is that the question? When? Right now. The only time there is.
I was thinking about when life begins for the human being. When the egg is fertilized, or when they come from the womb.
There are many ways to look at this. What you would call body consciousness, in that sense, will begin at what you call conception, at what you generally refer to as your style of sentient consciousness will generally enter just after physical birth. Now, this is, in a sense, not etched in stone and will vary, but that is the general tendency.
On our planet.
Nice.
But then on your planet, you say you.
On our planet, there is less of the dichotomy, but still a similar arrangement. And in fact, you will find that even in the first 3 years of your infant's life, there is still a very loose connection of what you call body and soul. It will generally lock in at what you call 3, and in that sense, really lock in what you call 33.
Yeah. And what's the communication before the child is born?
Well, as I said, there is an in and outness about it. It is not that cut and dry. But perhaps you may understand that it is not always that you are communicating inward. Very often individuals will express the communication to what they call the unborn child and still think of it in terms of out there, so to speak. This all becomes quite arbitrary.
The Chinese say, I believe it's the Chinese or the Japanese read to their unborn child, and they claim, oh, that makes them a whole lot smarter.
All right.
And how can there be communication if there's no soul there?
I did not say there was no soul there. I said your definition of sentience generally enters afterward, but there is a strong connection between what you would call the soul and the physical body. The physical body will exemplify what you call body consciousness, but the soul is still, in a sense, connected to the body. So perhaps I am being a bit humorous, poking a bit of fun, but the idea is if they are reading to what you call unborn child, you need not assume they are reading to the belly. They are reading to wherever the unborn child will manifest.
I'm thinking, it's coming to me now that the body is in the soul.
Nice.
All right.
And your focus of the soul as either being pinpoint in that body or a bit more expanded is what we are discussing. Thank you.
Elan?
One moment. Is that clear?
Yes, that is.
All right. Ace.
When you die, what will become of your body when you transform? On Essassani, what do you do with bodies when you're no longer need them?
Thank you. In general, there will be what you would generally refer to, though perhaps not in the macabre terms you are used to, as immediate disintegration or decay, perhaps.
From within, or something that you do?
Oh, it is simply immediate, for we are not, shall I say, cued by responses in the body that it is time. We make the decision, we close our eyes, we shift our consciousness, our body then no longer has a relevance to that reality and will seem to disintegrate.
Will we eventually get to a state like that?
Absolutely. Some individuals from time to time have done this.
Thank you.
Are there any in our lifetime?
Well, yes, but you have not heard of them. Nor are they ones that you would know. But the idea is, yes, it is a possibility. And anytime you wish, you can simply close your eyes, say, all right, it's time to go. And if you open them, it wasn't time. But you can be that conscious about it. And if it is time, you will have a nice trip.
Elan,
Yes.
I have had an experience like that where I consciously chose not to go.
Yes. And that will also sometimes be the case. You may say, all right, I'm ready, and find out you were not.
Right. I'd like to ask a question about an interaction that happened about 3 back when you said that there is a planet, or that was my understanding of what you said, where there are more than 2 sexes. Don't we have that on our planet?
Well, in a sense, yes, but we were referring to what you generally call the natural indigenous population. Now, there are what you would call mutative, perhaps you can say, examples of general varieties, but that was not what we were speaking of upon that actual planet. We were speaking of multiple distinct different sexes, which again become perhaps for now impossible to explain in terms that would make sense.
You mean physical manifestations of another sex?
Yes.
I see. Thank you.
And to you. At this timing, allow me to thank you all for your synchronous ability to attract yourself to this interaction. For even if when interacting with us, nothing is apparently of service to you, you will find that we do interact with you on what you create to be other levels, and therefore the usefulness of what we communicate with you and the timing and dispensation of it is an ongoing process. And you may just find walking down your street when a car comes by and splashes water all over your clothes that you say, "This is synchronicity." Elan said that would happen. And then you will take the positive action rather than kicking the car and hurting your foot. Each time you kick that car, yes, you will hurt that foot. So perhaps that is an example of performing the same action and getting a similar result. We thank you for your willingness in that way to interact with us at this timing. We thank you for your willingness to open up the many doors within you that allow you to see that it is all one house that you live within, one house that we live within, the house of all that is. We thank you and bid you a most fond and loving good evening.